Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Art at Home. My name is Mrs. Pingle in case you're new, and I'm a high school art teacher based out of West Michigan. This channel is dedicated to art education and it's meant to be a resource for my students. However, it could be helpful for anyone who is trying to better their own art skills. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to draw in proportion and why that's important. So what is proportion? Proportion is a part compared to a whole. So if you're going to take a three-dimensional object, you want to compare the height to the width to the length and then make sure all of those relationships stay in proportion to each other and that the relationship between them doesn't change. This is important because in order to draw things realistically, you need to know how to measure them and translate that into your drawing. It's more mathematical than a lot of people expect, but it's very easy math. If you understand and know how to work with fractions, then you can draw anything. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so here I have in my sketchbook a teacher example of what this is supposed to look like when you're measuring proportions. You want to start by setting up your still life and then identifying a key object, which is an object that can fit easily into your other objects, either by the height or the width. Once you've done that, go ahead and take the measurement of it with your sighting stick, and that can be a pencil or just a small stick-like tool. Shish kebab sticks work really well. And you're going to take the measurement by lining up the sighting stick with the top of the object and lining up your thumb with the bottom of the object, and then kind of locking that into place so that you know that that is how big that object is on the sighting stick. And step 4 is to compare that height to the height of the paper or the thumbnail box that you're working with. So if I take that measurement and I align it to the side of my thumbnail box, I can fit 5.5 apples into the height of my thumbnail box. Or I could say that the thumbnail box is 5.5 apples tall. Step 5 is to sketch a place saver for that key object. So you just want to draw like kind of a little bracket or a box that matches the length and the width of that object. Then again, check to make sure that this is fitting with your paper and that it's not going to be too zoomed in or zoomed out for the size of the objects. So compare to the entire paper with the length and the width of your key object, and then adjust. So if it's a little bit off, now is a great time to try to fix it so that you don't get into the details and then realize that it's not the right size or the right proportions. Then use your key object to measure the other objects. So ask yourself, how many apples can fit into the height of that candlestick or into the height of the box that it's sitting on? That'll help you keep all of your objects in proportion to each other. Okay, so I'm gonna start by opening up my sketchbook to the next blank page. And remember, if you're one of my students, I would love for you to be able to do this as a full page sketch and not a thumbnail sketch. So try to use the whole page. That way you can get more details and textures into your drawing. Just to show you some of the tools I'm going to be using, this is what I use as a sighting stick. This is actually a bamboo shish kebab stick, so you can get these at the grocery store, but you don't need to use one of these as a sighting stick. I know a lot of people just use their pencils, so I'll show you my pencils real quick. I'm using a number 2 HB pencil, so don't forget that that's what that little code means. But I also have a graphite pencil set. This is my H pencil from my Derwent graphite set. So this is going to be a little lighter than that HB pencil. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that H pencil just because it's on the lighter side. Just to show you guys what I have in front of me, this is my still life that I've set up and this is my sighting stick. So when you're measuring your own still life, try to use your sighting stick like this, taking the height of your key object and then comparing it to the height of the other objects that are in your still life. So the height of this candle right now is very similar to the height of the candlestick holder or whatever this is, the pedestal that it's sitting on. I'm going to take that measurement over to the jack-o'-lantern and show you that the jack-o'-lantern's just a little bit shorter than the height of the candle, but very similar in height to the terracotta pot. Now I'm going to compare the height of the candle to the width, and you notice how I have to kind of scooch my thumb in because it's definitely a lot taller than it is wide, and it's definitely wider on the top of the pedestal than the candle is. The jack-o'-lantern is also wider than the candle is. But then the terracotta pot is about the same width as the candle. Now I'm gonna see how many times the candle width fits in the width of the aloe. I have 1, 2, 3, and maybe 3 and like a third or a quarter, a little extra, more than 3. So that's how that compares to the candle width. Basically, you just want to make sure that all of your objects stay in proportion to each other so that your whole still life looks realistic. Now I'm gonna throw this into a sped up mode, but basically I'm gonna go ahead and sketch my key object first, which is that candle, and I'm gonna estimate the size here and then double check it and make sure that it's correct before I move on. And I'm not really trying to get the shape of the object perfectly right now. I'm really just trying to put a place-saving box in the spot where I want the candle to be, and then that way I can check it and make sure that it's good and I don't spend too much time drawing it in case I need to erase part of it. But you could also do kind of a bracket shape or like a capital I type of shape. That way you can also save the space for your key object. The next thing I'm gonna do is take that same height and duplicate it below, because as you remember, the candle height and the height of the pedestal it's sitting on are about the same. And here's another way you can do that. Literally mark on your citing stick how high that object is, and then you can replicate it really easily without having to do too much guesswork. The next thing I want to do is see how high up that pumpkin or jack-o'-lantern hits on that pedestal, because it does overlap, and I'm noticing that it is about a quarter of the way up. So I'm gonna make a little mark that shows about a quarter of the way up the pedestal and candle combo, and then replicating that size of the candle, the height of it, down below where that jack-o'-lantern should be. It's just a little bit shorter than the actual candle itself. And then I'm gonna take the width of the candle and then see that it is about 1 candle width plus about a half. So 1.5 candle widths is about how wide that jack-o'-lantern is. Next, I'm going to take the height of the candle and I'm going to replicate that for the terracotta pot, and I'm noticing that it hits the jack-o'-lantern maybe about halfway up instead of like a third like I've done it. So I think I do adjust that later on, but either way, you just want to make sure that you have place-saving boxes that will help you know where to fill in your objects. Next, I'm taking a look at the aloe itself, the plant, and I'm noticing how high up the tallest part is. It goes up above the candle for sure, and then it comes down into the pot, and then I'm going to try to measure and see how far the branches of the aloe actually reach. And then I realize it's kind of cut off for you guys. You don't see the actual ends of the aloe plant. However, I'm gonna check to make sure that they are going wide enough across the page by making sure that the terracotta pot width is what I'm using to keep it in proportion and to measure how many widths of the terracotta pot fit into the width of the aloe plant. You're gonna see me draw kind of a weird geometric shape down the middle of the page, but that's just me trying to show where the points of the aloe plant hit. So one is across the candle, one goes down and overlaps across the jack-o'-lantern, and then it goes back to the middle of the pot before it gets cropped off the edge of the paper for you guys. Next, I'm gonna start actually drawing the contours of my objects within their place-saving boxes. And the best tip I have for you is to make sure that you draw what you see and not what you know. And what I mean by that is that you wanna make sure you're looking really closely at the shapes of your objects, whether they be in front of you in real life or if they're in a photo that you took. You wanna make sure that, for instance, the circle on the top of the candle, you don't want to draw that as an actual circle because that would be drawing what you know about the object, but you want to actually draw it as more of an ellipse or a stretched out oval shape. And then just take a look at where other things hit other things. So for instance, the wax in the candle comes down about a quarter of the way for the label. So that's where I put the wax in the actual drawing, is about a quarter of the way, maybe a little less of the way down the candle. So just looking for little things like that to keep your proportions correct. And while I'm on that note, just a small disclaimer, I did actually draw this from life and I wasn't actually using the photo that I'm showing you guys, which was a mistake on my behalf. I should have just used the photo that I was showing in the video so that I could get these things more exact. But from where I was sitting at this time, I could see both flames of this 2-wick candle, and I realize now that in the photo you can't. I tried to get it from the exact same angle and height that I was sitting at, but sometimes these things just can't be replicated exactly. So just so you know, I'm not making up that second flame in the candle. I could actually see that from where I was sitting and viewing it in real life. And then as I'm drawing these objects, I don't really need the place-saving boxes anymore, so you can kind of see me going back and forth with my eraser in just a moment and getting rid of some of those measurement lines, which are no longer needed. About now is when I realized that that terracotta pot was just a little too tall and coming down a little too far on the pumpkin, so I brought it up just a little ways. I probably could have moved the whole pot up just a tad, but it's close enough. some sort of straight edge will be a lot better than freehanding your horizon line, I'm remembering. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my citing stick to try to mimic the straight edge at the edge of the table there, also known as the horizon line. Now that I kind of have the objects sketched in, they've got their contour lines and their outlines, I'm gonna go ahead and trace the cast shadows that are in front of the objects. And the reason they're in front of the objects is because of that window that is behind them. It's letting in a bunch of natural light, and that's causing the cast shadows to come forward rather than backward or to the side, which can happen. So just pay attention to where your light source is. Next, I'm gonna mimic this pattern that is in the candle label. I'm not gonna be able to draw it exactly, and you shouldn't have to, sit there and try to get this perfectly. You just wanna try to mimic it, and so treat it more like a texture than a pattern or a rhythm when it's something very small and hard to draw. Another rhythm I see going on is the wood grain that's in this wooden pedestal under the candle. You're not going to be able to get things like this perfectly, but you just want to mimic it as closely as you can. So pay attention to, is it thin lines or thick lines or light lines or bold lines, and then just mimic those the best that you can. The next detail I'm going to pay attention to is the rhythm that is on the leaves of the aloe plant. It's kind of this freckled, spotted sort of rhythm going on. It's not a pattern because it doesn't exactly repeat in a predictable way, but it's definitely repeating, so that makes it a rhythm. And I also noticed that there's this kind of jagged, sharp, kind of pokey edge that runs along the outside of the aloe leaves as well, so I'm going to try to mimic that the best I can. I'm just gonna finish this up by adding more texture to the dirt and the rocks that are in the aloe plant. And I'm gonna call that good for today because I don't necessarily need to add value quite yet. That was quite a bit of drawing to get these contour lines. So I'm gonna leave it at that for today and do value in a different video. That's it for this video, everybody. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button down below if you found this helpful, and to hit the subscribe button if you are new to the channel. Also, if you tried this out for yourself, I would love to see some of your examples, and the best way for me to see those is for you to post them on either Instagram or Twitter and to tag me in them so that I can comment and tell you what I think. All right, guys, I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!